Hello, welcome to the Modern Web Development video series, part 6. We're going to talk about Apache Cordova and getting you started on that. Now, just as a reminder, modern web development is not about having one all-purpose software application that tries to do everything. It's about putting together a kit of smaller, single-purpose tools and technologies and then connecting them together in a way that fits your coding style. Now, this is another reminder, this video series is aimed at web programming students. If you're already experienced, you've got other resources, but this is going to make your course projects a lot easier, let you write less code, do more with less time. So Apache Cordova is a popular open source framework for deploying mobile web applications. It adds a native code wrapper to your web app, allowing it to access mobile device hardware like the GPS or the accelerometer. Now, if you were doing mobile development, you could just write it in the device's native language. So, for example, on iOS, you would use Objective-C or Swift. If you're targeting Android devices, you'd use Java, but with a tool like Cordova, you can write a single web app using technologies you already understand, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then just deploy it on multiple mobile platforms. You don't have to maintain all these different code bases. Now, the Cordova tool is based on Node.js, so you can use the Node package manager to install it. I'm assuming at this point that you already have the Modern Web Development Toolkit installed, and that includes Cordova. So I'm just going to go ahead and run it by itself just to make sure it's installed correctly. And I get my usage commands, and it looks pretty good. Now, if there are additional dependencies that you need depending on what platform you are supporting, so you go to the Cordova platform guide and get additional information about that. Now, in order to target a specific platform, we need to have the tools, the software development kit for that platform. So, for example, if you are targeting iOS, you're going to need to have Apple's free developer tools installed. If you are targeting Android, you're going to need the Android SDK. They're both free. The Xcode is not cross-platform, unfortunately. Developing for iOS, you will have to have a Mac or access to a Mac. So there are other options, and we'll talk about that when we talk about PhoneGap. So PhoneGap does give you some options for developing for iOS, but not having a Mac. So we'll talk about that later. Cordova, on the other hand, you do need a Mac to do an iOS. I'm going to use iOS as my demo today. And it's very, very easy to set up my Cordova project. I can use Cordova itself. Just go Cordova Create, and maybe call it My App. Why not? Grind. Get rid of that, and let's try it again. Boom, I've got a new Cordova project, and I'm going to go into my project folder, and I'm going to add support for iOS. You have to use the Cordova platform command to add support for whatever platform you're targeting, iOS, Android, Ubuntu, Windows, whatever. And so I'm going to go ahead and add support for the iOS. Grind. Now, there are Yeoman generators for Cordova projects. And so if you wanted to use that, we talked about Yeoman and Bower and Grunt in an earlier video. So if you just want to keep that as part of your workflow, please feel free to do that. On the other hand, we're just going to be using Cordova today. And if we want to find out what platforms we already have, platform LS, and it says, well, I've got iOS. Okay, great. But here's some also available ones. So if I wanted to say Cordova add, platform add, Android, add BlackBerry 10, add WebOS, I just do it. So let's take a look at our folder and just see what's there. Okay, looking at starting up here with the hooks folder. This is where we have scripts that are added by application or plugin developers to customize Cordova commands. The platform folder has build information for every platform to which I'm deploying my app. So there's going to be, in this case, iOS build information. If I added Android as a platform, that's where the Android build information would be. Plugins is how we extend the functionality of our application to let it access device-specific hardware. So this is where we would have the plugin to talk to our, say, our smartphone's GPS. And www, of course, is where our actual application code, our web code, resides. This config.xml, this is a global configuration file for our application. And it's written in the XML format. And it's using the W3C packaged web apps specification. Something to note before going on, do not edit any files in the platforms folder. These are managed by Cordova itself, so you don't need to touch them at all. So let's take a look at our code and pull up my app. There it is. Hooks platform, dub. And so I've got some CSS, I've got some images, I've got my JavaScript file. Let's pull up index.html and just see what Cordova gives us to start with. Here we go. So we've got a device ready div tag. So when your app starts up, it starts up with connecting to device and then says device is ready. So this is the Cordova equivalent of hello world. Now, how do we see this in action? Well, first, we need to build our app. In other words, we need to compile the code and then package it into the proper device format. Now, if we want to just go ahead and do it, if we said Cordova build, that would run a build for all installed platforms. If I only want to build for a specific device, then I would have to put in the name of the platform that I'm building for. Now, the build command is actually a combination of two Cordova commands. Cordova prepare, and Cordova compile. The prepare command lets you use your desktop tools to do your code work, to do your building. So if I would just say I want to do a prepare, but then I'm going to use Xcode to actually work with my project. So but let's do a build first and just kind of see what happens. And a lot of stuff happens, as it turns out. Grind, build succeeded. And cool. So, how do we test it? Well, we can use an emulator, or we can directly test it on our device. So I've installed Xcode. Xcode does come with iOS emulators, and that's one of the reasons why you need why you need to have the SDK installed. So let's go to this Cordova. Emulate iOS or whatever platform you're currently testing. Now, I didn't tell it what iOS device to emulate, so it's going to just sort of default to iPhone 6. And hopefully, there's my emulator starting up and doing my standard iOS boot. And then it's going, once it's the emulator startup, it's going to load up my app. And since, of course, this is emulation, it's going to take a little bit longer than an actual physical device. Boot, boot, boot. Come on, baby. And now there's my app. My app is loading. And we get my devices ready screen. Now, depending on what emulator you've got, you should be able to simulate just about any hardware command. So we've got Touch ID, finger touch, rotate left, rotate right. I can switch to a different device, to say iPad Air, iPad Pro. I can fire up the keyboard. So, yeah, this works okay. I mean, if you don't actually have a hardware device, at least let you test it. Now, the other way to do it is with an actual physical device. So if I want to test it on my iPhone, I would have to first set it up to use it for testing. In other words, you need to plug it into your developer machine and tell Xcode, in this case, that, yeah, this is my test device, and so go ahead and when you load up the app, load it on here. And this procedure actually differs by platform, so check the platform guides for your particular device instructions. So if you have an appropriate device set up for testing, go ahead and plug it in your computer and then just run command Cordova run iOS or Android or WebOS. So that's enough to get you started with Cordova. If you check the Cordova documentation for more details. And in the next video, we're going to talk about an add-on, an extension of Cordova called PhoneGap. And until then, we'll see you later.